Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 68. Over a Basset. Part 1. I don't get it. Twilight sighed, looking out the window with a frown. What's that, Chui? Rainbow Dash asked, pulling her head from where she had stuck it out the window. This is a train, right? Yep. A train generally runs on its own, coal, steam, or magic powered, right? Twilight continued. Also yep. Dash agreed. Then why is there a team of ponies pulling the train? Twilight complained. Coal scarcity. Dash yawned. What? Twilight blinked, stunned at not only a quick answer but also not a weird one as she expected. Coal scarcity. This is a coal-run train, but Apalioaza is a new settlement. When they run supplies out, it's a full horse team. They only burn coal on the way back because the train has less weight and uses less coal. Dash explained. How? Twilight stared. What? I can't be smart. Dash scoffed. Twilight continued to stare. Fine. It was on a flyer back at the train station in the bathroom, and I needed something to read at the time, Dash admitted. You. Hey, I washed my hooves. Asterisk. Honestly, of all the absurd things to be doing. Rarity grumbled, dropping into her seat next to Twilight. What? You noticed that we're being pulled and not using the main car too? Twilight asked, looking up at Rarity a bit hopeful. What? Never mind, what's wrong? Twilight sighed, returning to her book. Applejack was reading that tree a bedtime story. Rarity rolled her eyes. Have you ever heard of anything so ridiculous? Lately, yes. Twilight deadpanned. Still, I've read some studies that show music can help plants grow, and Applejack is the farmer here, so maybe she knows best. Perhaps, but it's still strange. I've caught you asking your cat questions as if she could answer you. Twilight responded. Fluttershy. Rarity stated. Touché, Twilight admitted. Moving on, so how is Spiky settling into school? Rarity asked. Surprisingly well. He's a little miffed we had to leave him behind, but he has classes and can't just take off anytime. Granny Smith agreed to let him stay at the farm for the next few days since we're helping Applejack on this trip. Twilight shrugged. And how about our new prince? Rarity smirked. Still annoyed at the title and snappish at anyone who tries to use it. He's got a lot on his mind with what we were told, add that into the issue he has with his winter coat, and he's not in the best mood. Twilight shrugged. He could have let me come alone and stayed with Spike, but he decided to tag along anyway. Oh, thanks for finishing that duster for him finally. Don't mention it. He already thanked me. Rarity considered. I think. But he seemed to like it. I'm not exactly fond of the green and burnished gold trim, but it doesn't look that bad. I should have used a darker green, to be honest, to match the hue of his fur at least, but forest green was all I had at the time. It's fine. Really? We might order a few more in case something happens to that one, at least when you're done with the gala dresses for every pony. No rush. Twilight offered, turning a page. The coat was surprisingly modest given how little he wanted done with it, mostly pockets. Still, I can try a few different combinations when I have the time, or if you order more. Rarity smirked. Most of the dresses are already done, Sweetie Belle and Apple Bloom are already fitted and love them. Granny Smith was pleased with Apple Bloom's, but she wasn't quite thrilled with how fancy hers was. So I've got to trim that down to a simpler design. I already have Pinkie Pie's designed, and Matilda already has one of my dresses, so all I need to do with hers is make sure it still fits and isn't fraying. Then I can work on my own dress. I have a few ideas for every pony else, however. Perhaps if you ever go to a fancy party I'll have something in mind for you. Might be nice. I think the only dress I have is from when I was still dating before I moved here. Twilight said absently. Really, any pony interesting in Canterlot? Rarity smirked. Couple of idiots, a few outright jerks, and one or two that were all right. Twilight shrugged. Oh? Care to go into more detail than that? Rarity practically begged for the gossip. Not really. Twilight stated simply, yet to look up from her book again. Oh, you're no fun. Rarity pouted. Asterisk. Ross growled as he pulled the hat down over his head further. The massive white 10-gallon cowboy hat covered his head down to his eyes, but it did however hide the poof ball that was his head fur rather well. The coat Rarity had made him was nice too, and covered the rest of his misshapen fur. He hoped the dry air of Apelioasa would let it calm down. He also liked the idea of being out of Luna's reach for a few days. The Princess of the Moon had a habit of popping down from Canterlot at random times of the day or night over the last week, either to try and offer cookies, most of which were inedible even to Spike, or suggest someone for him to have a look at as a date. Usually it was a royal guard or a maid she had found. Once or twice she had actually brought the confused, or downright terrified mare to Ponyville with her. Ross was at his wits' end on what to do about her. On one paw she was going way too far with the grandmother thing. On the other paw it was nice to have someone seem to care this much for him other than his sister and brothers. His adoptive parents were full of their own issues and Twilight's grandparents on both sides were not exactly thrilled with the dragon or moon dog relatives. On Nightlight's side it was due to Dayglow having been a guard and fought against the diamond dogs and dragons on more than one occasion. On Velvet's side it was with Granny and Grandpa Cashmere thinking that Velvet adopting the pair of them was dragging their family name down further from nobility. They were not mean, just disappointed, and Grandpa Dayglow watched him like he was going to steal the silverware every time he was over. Not a fun group. He had been dwelling on how his life should have been had Twilight not pulled him out of where he was supposed to be. It was pointless to think about it in true, one couldn't change the past. It annoyed him that his thoughts went that way. Twilight and Spike understood it, Spike more than Twilight as his younger brother often thought about where he came from. Still he could tell they were starting to get fed up with his being moody. Sure he did it every year due to how itchy and stupid looking his fur got, but this had lasted longer than usual thanks to everything he had learned. His fur was mostly worked out now and all he had left to be angry about was his lot in life, which really wasn't even slightly bad. He also probably shouldn't have blown up at the others for chatting while he was trying to sleep. Had he been less annoyed at everything, he probably would have wondered why they were calling Fluttershy a tree. Still, storming out with his pillow and a blanket probably wasn't the highlight of his day, but he was annoyed and tired. Better to stay with the tree rather than listen to the group continue on like they were at a slumber party. He paused in the train car, looking at the apple tree tucked away in a bed like a sleeping child. He stared for a moment, before simply wrapping himself up in his blanket and curling up on the floor next to the bed. At least the tree was quiet. Author's note. Here's the start of another one, shouldn't be that long of a episode though. End author's note. End chapter 68. Over a Basset. Part 1.